Do you want a thin and light gaming laptop with muscles but don't want to carry a huge 17-inch monster that weighs 10 pounds around? And perhaps your thin GTX 1061 doesn't quite cut it. Well, Nvidia has the Max-Q GPUs with lower power consumption to allow a thinner and quieter laptop. Is this just fiction or fact? So let's find out. Here we have the Asus GX501 Zephyrus. It combines the diminutive stature of the likes of the HP Spectre 360 or Yoga 720, being about only 17mm thin, but packs the power of an MSI GT73 VR. Even against the standard 15-inch GTX 1070 laptops like the MSI GT62 VR, it looks positively tiny. It has the Max-Q version of the GTX 1080 with a TDP of 110 watts. Now that's slightly below that of the 1070. To help keep temperatures in check, it uses a non-overclockable CPU. You can either have a $2,700 8-thread i7-7700HQ CPU, as in my unit here, or an i5-7300HQ 4-thread CPU, which must be in future models. It has 16 GB of DDR4 2400 MHz Samsung RAM, expandable to 24 GB, and a 512 GB PCI Express SSD, which is also made by Samsung. It is very fast and speedy, with a boot time of 9 seconds, write speed of 1.6 GB per second, and reads of 3.2. This is actually one of the fastest I have actually seen, and unfortunately there is only one SSD slot. It has a 112Hz IPS G-Sync 1080p panel, which is not glossy, and it's no Optimus. The panel ID is AUO42ED, and according to the spec sheet, a 60Hz panel may also be available. Its color accuracy is similar to competing models with 96% of sRGB, 73% of Adobe RGB, and 67% of NTSC. It's actually quite bright at 270 lux, which is the same as the QHD Alienware 17R4, and impressively, it maintains a good brightness level all the way down to 50%, which is still higher than the GT73 VR. Here I compare it to the HP Spectre 360, which had a bright 4K display. Viewing angles, I find, are very good. And even outdoors, there are minimal reflections, and that higher brightness will help if you are playing near a window or under bright fluorescent lighting. The biggest downside is if you want to conserve battery life by lowering the brightness, because it doesn't change it all that much. And with only a 50 watt-hour battery and G-Sync, don't expect to use this laptop as your business daily driver. At 25% screen brightness, power saver and battery saver on, I streamed YouTube for about 2 hours, 22 minutes. Applying an undervolt of about 120 millivolts to the CPU did increase that by 10 minutes. I think this is quite respectable for a gaming laptop with this amount of powerful hardware in there, and it's actually comparable to some 17-inch monsters. But compared to, say, the Aorus X337 that had 7 hours of runtime and also gained perfectly well at 1080p, it doesn't quite come close. But by itself, it does weigh 4.1 pounds, and this is the same as the less powerful Aero 15. This is a good achievement. With a power brick, it only weighs 6.1 pounds, and even if you carry a portable battery pack at 8.4 pounds, it weighs less than the Sage's NP9873 with its huge 230 watt power brick. The power brick for the Zephyrus is only 230 watts, the same as used by the GTX 1070 notebooks. It's a great looking machine, not only because it is thin with a brushed aluminum lid and aluminum chassis. It doesn't actually really scream gamer, even with the ROG logo subtly embossed on the lid. This is until the unit is powered on. There are two very bright red LED lights shining brightly from underneath the rear hinge, and believe me, they can be seen from a long way off. This hinge mechanism, however, is quite ingenious, and it is about time we saw some changes in cooling design. When you open the lid, it raises the back up by about 6mm and opens up an air vent through which air is drawn into. A small amount of air is also drawn into the upper chassis where the keyboard normally is, through a series of small perforated holes. Hot air is actually expelled via two heat sinks in the back above the beautifully designed rear Asus backplate, but it's also expelled at the side here. There are some downsides to this hinge mechanism design. Often I would get my mouse cable stuck in the gap there, which would limit a little bit of airflow. And second, it doesn't allow you to attach an external monitor and play with the laptop lid closed. As soon as you close the lid, the frame rate drops into the 20s as the clock rate of the GPU is slashed. So if you plan on doing this, make sure the laptop lid is open. So how does the cooling perform? Doing CPU tasks such as video encoding, rendering or photo work, it is actually pretty good. 71 degrees Celsius. Cooler even than the same sized Aero 15, yet the more powerful GPU. In fact, it was the same temperature as the Acer Predator 17X, which is a large 17-inch laptop with the same CPU. As you can see, using the i7-7700HQ was probably a wise choice to keep temperatures in check. As soon as you use the overclockable i7-7820HK, temperatures are much harder to control. How about gaming? Well, again, the CPU was fairly cool at 84 degrees. Undervolting by 120 millivolts brought that down by 6 degrees. It was still cooler than the Aero 15 and same temperature as the Acer Predator 17X. The CPU didn't throttle, averaging 300 and 465 MHz. The GTX 1080 was also very cool at 73 degrees, not quite as cool as the similarly powered GTX 1070 in a 17-inch laptop, but amazingly cooler than the GTX 1060 in the equally as slim Aero 15. I think this is quite an achievement. In terms of clock speed, the GTX 1080 peaks at 1709 MHz, but applying the following overclock, it had an average peak speed of 1902 MHz, which, to be fair, isn't bad. Even playing in a warmer environment such as 80 degrees Fahrenheit, the Zephyrus handled it very well. The CPU reached 86 degrees and the GPU reached 81 degrees, again with no throttling. To stress it further, I ran Prime 95 and the Heaven benchmark simultaneously. The peak power pull from the wall was 188 watts. The CPU reached 92 degrees and the GTX 1080 reached 79 degrees, again with no reported throttling. To say I was surprised at its cooling performance is actually an understatement. I expect actually other similar designs to follow suit by other manufacturers. The Max-Q design also promises quiet fans, and indeed it does. There's no fan control, so it is all automatic. At load, it peaked at 37 decibels, which is comparable to, say, the Yoga 720 or even the normal fan on the Aero 15. But the normal fan on the Aero 15 doesn't actually even keep it cool. You have to use at least the gaming fan profile there, and that is much, much louder. The quietest 17-inch GTX 1080 laptop I used was the Acer Predator 17X, and that produced similar noise levels and temperatures. So I think that performance is quite amazing. At idle, the Zephyrus was whisper quiet too. One would expect that these low temperatures and high performance, that perhaps the chassis temperature must be getting hot. Well, yes and no. The keyboard is cool. The AWSD keys at 29 degrees and the trackpad at 30 degrees. The logo above the heat pipes was actually hotter at 44 degrees, but underneath was a toasty 48 degrees. But due to the keyboard position, I doubt you would actually be playing this on your lap anyway. The keyboard is pushed forward. To make room for the extra cooling, this actually makes typing on your laptop pretty awkward. Not too bad for a two-finger prodder like myself, but if you type touch type, it will be difficult as it does tend to tip off your legs. On a desk, it is fine. And Asus even provides a rubber wrist support. They also include a USB to Ethernet port dongle and a screwdriver in case you need to open it up. To open it up, first you need to remove the plastic back cover by removing 4 screws. The easiest way to open the lid and gently pull it away. You then remove several T5 screws with the lid open, press down on the hinge area and lift up the keyboard to reveal its innards. You see there are 5 heat pipes and 3 heat sinks. The ones to the rear are actually quite deep. To replace the Wi-Fi card, you will need to lift up the cooling system. So I think that is a strange design choice. There is 1 stick of RAM available to upgrade, with a second on the other side of the motherboard. Looking at the battery, it actually does take up quite a bit of space, so I'm not really sure how they could improve that further. On the left hand side, we have an air vent, a DC in, HDMI 2 port, 2 USB 3 ports, and a combo headphone microphone jack. On the right hand side, we have a USB-C Thunderbolt 3 port, 2 more USB 3 ports, and a Kensington lock. Now, I really like that it has 4 USB ports. Many ultra portables only have 2 at most, and even the Alienware 17R4 only has 2. The only thing I would have liked to have seen actually is an SD card reader. This is what the HD webcam looks and sounds like. Here's a 720p webcam. The Zephyrus has 2 small speakers located at the front edge. Now, they are not super loud, and in fact, to be honest, are probably one of the lower ones that I've actually tried. So at 73 decibels, might not be as loud as the Yoga 720 or even the HP Spectre 360 for that matter, but still, at least they are front firing. And since the fans are quiet, you can still hear any action that is going on, or, you can use headphones. Asus includes its Sonic Studio 2 software, so you can choose profiles such as gaming, music, or movies. You can customize the equalizer by various presets, either by game genre or game type or music genre. You can turn surround sound on, off, alter reverb, bass, and voice clarity. Now, looking at the keyboard, the action keys on the left are highlighted, and I have always been a fan of the oversized spacebar. There is a fair amount of keyboard flex, and there's also not much distance of key travel. And to be honest with you, they feel rather mushy to me. The trackpad is over to the right-hand side, which, of course, is a little bit awkward for, if you're a left-hander. It did take me a little bit while to get used to it, but to be honest, I did get used to it, and I didn't mind it in the end. And I didn't mind that it was narrower than most other trackpads. To be honest, I think most users will probably use an external mouse anyway. Scrolling and pinch to zoom worked well, as it uses Windows precision drivers. Now, the trackpad also doubles as a number pad. Unfortunately, there's no tactile feedback, but certainly it works okay. There is a separate key to bring up the ROG Gaming Center software. This software allows you to look at the system information, including CPU clock speeds on each core and the temperature of each core. Lets you look at the memory speed and GPU clock speed and temperature. You can also see how much SSD space you are using and how much RAM you are using. You can also create different game profiles, each with a different lighting configuration. The RGB keyboard lighting can be changed using the Aura app. Pressing F3 and F7 allows you to adjust 3 different brightness settings. You can create 3 customized light settings and have a number of presets to choose from, such as breathing, static, or color cycle. You can change the tempo to slow, medium, or fast. And within the zone mode, you can apply lights to either all of the keyboard, WASD keys, or the QWER keys. Clicking on the other zone brings up the color wheel, which allows you to pick whatever color you like. All right, enough of me waffling on. I know you guys want to see how fast or slow this thing is. Now, in all my charts, I make sure I put the Zephyrus listed at the very top so it's easy to keep track of. So first up are the CPU tests. No surprises on the Cinebench R15 multi-threaded benchmark. 743 points is a good score for the i7 7700 HQ. Still, you can see the performance difference if you use an overclockable CPU. Using Adobe Lightroom to convert 50 photos to a video slideshow, we get a very good result. 12.5 minutes. That is some 5 minutes faster than the Gigabyte P57X with the same CPU. It was only 3 minutes off the i7 6820HK, which was clocked at 4.1 GHz. Using Handbrake to encode a 4 GB video file to MP4 saw the same performance as other laptops with the same CPU. Perhaps slightly faster, but of course it cannot compete with an overclocked laptop. If you plan on doing a lot of video rendering or encoding, perhaps waiting for the Aorus X3 MD may be a wise choice, as that will have the i7 7820HK CPU on board. So let's look at some games. Battlefield 1, Ultra Settings, 1080p. This game loves fast CPUs. The Zephyrus is only 13% behind the stock clocked GTX 1080, Asus G701 VI. An overclocked i7 7820HK with an overclocked GTX 1070 does very well here. Rainbow Six Siege, max settings, even at 1080p, this is a great game to compare a GPU's performance. An overclocked Zephyrus is just behind the Acer Predator 17X. That is fantastic, although the Acer costs $700 less. The overclocked Asus G752 VS matches the stock clocked Zephyrus. This shows that perhaps a laptop such as an overclocked Asus X5 V7, which is a 15-inch laptop that weighs £1 more and $700 less than the Zephyrus, could be a good value proposition. A regular GTX 1070 laptop is about 12% slower, but you can buy one for about $1,000 less. Metro Last Light is perhaps getting a little bit old, but it still provides a good test at very high settings, 1080p. At 120 FPS, the Zephyrus matches the stock clocked GT73 VR and only 6% behind the KB Lake Alienware 17R4. That is very good. Activating Whisper mode caps the frame rate at 40 FPS and brings the fan noise down to 28 decibels. Not really worthwhile on this laptop, but it runs cool and quiet as it is. But on a hotter, more louder laptop, I can see it's worth. Rise of the Tomb Raider, DX12, near max settings at 1080p. An overclocked Zephyrus is in spitting distance of the big 17-inch GTX 1080 laptop. Still, I think value lies in a GTX 1070 laptop with an overclocked CPU. At 119 FPS, it matches the GTX 1080 Zephyrus for less money. The final game at 1080p is The Witcher 3. Max settings, I throw in the mix the result from my Alienware 15R3 with an i7-6820HK, which just pipped the Zephyrus. Stepping up to the big 17-inch GTX 1080 laptops yields an extra 19% at stock and up to 30% improvement when they are overclocked. That is not such a good one for the Zephyrus. Perhaps the CPU was actually holding it back. Time Spy is an interesting one in that it shows that an overclocked GTX 1070 with an overclocked CPU just beats the stock clocked Zephyrus. But you have to bear in mind that this comes at the expense of heat and noise. I did test a couple of games at the 3440x1440 resolution. Grand Theft Auto 5 saw the Zephyrus trail the G701 VI 89 FPS to 101 FPS, and in Tomb Raider 66 FPS to 75 FPS. So that is about a 13% behind. Now there's a lot of data there, so I went through 5 games of a range of laptops to prepare a gaming performance summary at 1080p. With a stock clocked Zephyrus as the baseline, or 0 points, a stock clocked GTX 1070 laptop with an overclockable CPU is only 4% behind. An overclocked Zephyrus on average gives an extra 4% performance, and this allows it to basically match a full-fledged GTX 1080 laptop with the same CPU. Now these laptops, like the Acer 17X, are $500 to $700 less expensive, but they do weigh a lot more, about £4 heavier more, and not as portable. An interesting option is an overclocked GTX 1070 laptop with an overclockable CPU, such as the Asus X5 V7, as that is about 8% faster than the Zephyrus for less money. Finally, if you decide to go out and buy a fully fledged GTX 1080 laptop with an overclockable CPU, you can expect about a 17% improvement. An ideal candidate for this would be Eurocom's Tornado F5. That is a 15-inch laptop with a desktop i7-7700K CPU and only weighs about £2 more, and it's not that much more expensive than the Zephyrus. To conclude then, there is an awful lot to like about the Asus Zephyrus GX501. You have to hand it to Asus for a design, a portable gaming laptop that can compete in performance with the more traditional 17-inch models without sacrificing temperatures or fan noise. Build quality is also superb, and the screen is fluid, and I saw no ghosting. It has great viewing angles, but in a way I would like to have seen a QHD 120Hz display as an option. The only downsides I could find were A, the price, $2,700 is a lot of money, and at 1080p, a lightweight GTX 1060 model for $1,000 less is a good alternative, and they do get much better battery life. Which takes me to my second negative. As a daily travel computer for both work and play, 2.5 hours of battery life is okay considering the hardware, but it's not going to last long on the road. Plus, the keyboard position makes it hard to type on your lap. And third, the speakers are pretty anemic. I would have liked to have seen speakers comparable to the Yoga 720. Well, still, it's a great laptop. I give it a score of 84%, which is pretty good. If you look past any of the negatives I mentioned above, as any of those shortcomings, it may well be the perfect laptop for you. Anyway, thanks for watching. Thumbs up, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.